Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Higher Perspective. And with me is special guest Dr. John Hache. And we've been having a little conversation before this started, and it's been delightful, actually. I mentioned about some of the things I had at the conference in Canada last week, and we were talking about how inflammation is the initial reaction of the body to all damage, and therefore it's the beginning stage of all disease. And when I was working with Dr. West, we learned all these techniques for doing hands-on healing by basically taking injuries, and if you keep the lymph flowing, the injury heals faster. But what we also got is these little electrical devices called AccuSparks. They're basically a piezoelectric device. Have you ever seen those, Dr. Hache? It just gives a little static electric spark. And I found that when it was more of a chronic problem, that if you use the little AccuSpark on it, then you could sit there and rub, and it wouldn't seem to get the fluid out and take the pain down. You put the AccuSpark on it, blah, 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 and it. And what I kind of theorized at the time was, based on what I understood, is that the fibrinogen gets into the tissue spaces, and if it's been there very long, the electrical energy starts to diminish and it starts to clot. And you need electrical current to come in and break it up to get things moving out. And I think we mentioned that, and you found that to be true too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because when you talk about that spark, there's a piezoelectric sort of effect.
Yes.
Rubbing two crystals together create a spark. And I've seen pretty rudimentary devices over time, and people have come up. I had one Chinese fellow came up to me one day and he said, I have this magical wand. I said, what's your wand? He says, actually, it's a barbecue lighter.
Yeah. Well, I actually should put up here a little bit about your credentials here, so people can see a little bit about you. He gave some slides here, so I'm going to skip over here. So this is who we're talking to. He has a lot of experience with this. Naturopathy, phytotherapy, doctor of natural medicine, humanitarian services, homeopathy, biofeedback. So you have some pretty impressive credentials. But what you've been working on is using, and this is your wife. She works with you, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Here we go.
And now we're talking a little bit about this earlier. We'll just like painkillers. I never take them because all they're doing is masking that you have a problem. And they make medicine a fortune. In fact, one of the reasons why I think modern medicine got so popular was because they created painkillers. And everybody feels pain. Nobody likes to feel pain. So somebody who can relieve pain, that seems like a miracle to people. So, but they cause a lot of problems, don't they?
They do cause a lot of problems. As a matter of fact, it's one of the leading causes of death in America is actually adverse effects created by things such as Vioxx, opiate drugs, so on and so forth, all wanting to get rid of the pain, but they're going at it the wrong way.
Yeah, they're not actually making the pain go away. So I want to get into the whole thing of microcurrent here. So let's see if I can get to the right slide here, because we don't have time to go through everything that you've got. So tell us about microcurrent, okay, and why that is important for helping the body to heal. Okay.
Well, a lot of people ask me what is microcurrent. The microcurrent is pretty well the same energy that animates your brain, your heart, and your cells chatter to each other. 50 trillion cells talking to each other all day long. I actually use microcurrent to do it. And a specific frequency that we call a sine wave, a specific wave. A sine wave is the most simple wave that you'll find in nature. You could liken it to a bird call, for example. A robin's song is basically a sine wave. And your body uses sine waves and microcurrent to communicate from cell to cell to cell to cell.
Right, like brain waves. You get your brain scan and you see the waves of the brain, of the electrical
And the
current,
heart rate, yeah.
flowing through the brain. But these are very, very tiny currents. So like when I was using the AccuSpark with Dr. West, it was basically just a little electrical shock, like when you rub your feet on the carpet and you touch someone and zap
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
But you have a lot more sophisticated energy going on, right? I mean,
Yeah, we've been able to replicate what goes on pretty well within the body, and we look at it. We'll see in a moment. James Oshman and others, Zen Georgi actually came up with a program looking at how the body works, and it's not actually a bag of chemicals. It's actually a very complex communication system. And here we see Nobel Prize in Physiology. And the reason why I put that in there is because medicine for many years, they used to kind of joke and laugh about microcurrent, or thinking that electricity would actually heal the body. They call it Frankenstein medicine.
right.
Mary Shelley wasn't far off the mark when she wrote the book on Frankenstein. Up the voltage ego or sort of thing, But it wasn't until these two fellows came along and won a Nobel Prize for actually being able to measure the amount of electricity at the cell itself. I think they were using a muscle cell, and they were able to patch clamp it, and they were able to measure how much energy was actually going through the cell at any given time. To prove that definitely there is energy, there is electricity in the cell, and the cell lives and communicates because of these low frequencies.
Yeah. So, can you kind of explain what this is showing about those frequencies? Because that's one of the things that Dr. West was talking about is we talked about the sodium potassium pump and the whole idea that there's an electrical charge on the cell membrane, right?
Right. The cell membrane itself, there's this wonderful book that was written by Bruce Lipton called The Biology of Belief.
Right, yes.
A lot of people are very familiar with, where he talks about the cell of the membrane, the membrane of the cell is actually the cell's brain.
Right.
And everything that gets through the membrane and through the cell, it will dictate pretty well your life.
Right.
Because things need to get through that membrane. And there are receptors on the membrane, just like we have receptors on our skin. We have your eyes, your ears, your sense of smell. And you have these receptors on the cells, on the cell membrane. And what these two fellows were able to show was that the nutrition that gets through the membrane that feeds the cell is actually activated by what we call voltage gated channels, where they open and they close, and they let these nutrients in, and they close to more noxious things. So you can see on the left side, you see a resting potential of 70 millivolts will actually close the channel, while 50 millivolts will open the channel back up again. So you have things proteins and all kinds of things that animate your cell go in and out based on these voltage gated channels. And we're starting to hear more and more about them now.
Have you ever seen the book, The Fourth Phase of Water?
Not really. I haven't.
Okay.
It's one of the areas that I know about, but I haven't really studied as much as I should.
Well, if we have time, I'll mention about it. But here is showing wounds healing with microcurrents. So you want to explain what this is all about? Because this is very impressive. So
it's actually in the Malaysian book of wound healing. Actually, is got these pictures, has these pictures in it that they got a hold of, but they did put my name on the bottom, which is nice. And on this picture on the left, you'll see what happened. It's what we call a skin grab. The fellow had his foot stomped on by his horse, and they had to take a bit of skin off the inner arm and put it onto the foot. The foot also got golden staph. He got really badly infected. So they decided to go up to the arm, cut a piece of skin out, put onto his foot, but it wasn't healing. And when they came to see us, you see the left picture where everything is just sitting there.
Right.
And after day number 4, we have a full healing of that wound with a microcurrent
4 days.
in 4 days. Yeah,
That's 4 days of difference.
that's right.
So, because when I was working with Dr. West, he had a thing in his book about them putting electrodes over a bone that was broken, and it accelerated the rate at which the bone knitted back together, and that really impressed me. That electrical current will increase the regenerative ability of tissues.
Yeah, this we did. I was involved. You see later on, I was involved in a 100-person study in Malaysia because Malaysia has a high rate of type 2 diabetes. 1 in 4 people get type 2 diabetes in Malaysia. And so they get a lot of people that have gangrene, and, which is a natural evolution of type 2 diabetes when it's not taken care of, and peripheral neuropathy, so on and so forth. So this was a beginning of gangrene. They did what they call a raised amputation, and they cut a piece out, and it wasn't healing. So what we did is we went in with microcurrent, and within 30 days, you can see the results on the right.
Yeah, that's impressive.
The same thing with venous ulcers. Venous ulcers are very hard to heal. This was a 66-year-old Chinese gentleman. He'd had it for 5 years. It was getting reinfected. And I have to mention that the trial in Malaysia on 100 people, they only gave us 2 frequency sets allowed, and we had to make a difference within 30 days. This was all of these are within 30 days.
Wow, that's really amazing.
Yeah, this was a sacral sore. We see a lot of these people, a lot more people than you could ever imagine die of these bed sores.
Wow.
They get infected, reinfected. They dig deep into the body. People die from the infections, and they had it for more than 5 months. And within 30 days, again, we were able to get a huge amount of closure on it.
Yeah.
The same thing here.
This one is so like
It's so medical, like, just to show that. Surprised to see the doctor stick his tweezers into that sore just to illustrate how it wasn't healing.
it was so dead. I mean,
normally they would have cut it off, but
yeah,
they gave us 30 days again, and we were able to save his toe.
fantastic.
And this is again, you see these. This one was following cancer, skin cancer. They dug it out, but it wasn't healing, and she was left with a 1-inch deep wound. And after microcurrent, day 1, 2, and 3, up on the right side is completely closed from the inside out. Only took 3 days for that.
3 days. That's a big change in 3 days.
Oh yeah, this fellow I know very well. He's from Montana, and he rides a horse, and he's got cattle, and he's on his range, and his horse threw him and stomped on his head. And he sent a pictures. It's funny because his mom was at one of my training courses, and he sent a picture into his mom. She said, "Oh my God, this is a picture I just got from my son. He's got blood all over his face." He says, "Mom," he says, "I think I'm in trouble." And he was sitting in his pickup truck, and so she as soon as she got home, she started working on him, and we got totally only with microcurrent, and we were able to get this closed up. And he had this wound in his face. You could see his teeth through his face where he hit a rock.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long did this take?
Oh, that's within 10 days.
Yeah.
Same thing here. That was the same lady. Not very lucky. This is her mom who fell in an old folks' home, and her mom was in bad shape when she went in there. And after a bit of microcurrent again, I think it was a week, 10 days, she was able to get her back in the proper healing.
Yeah, that's a lot of healing.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so let's. What about, okay, now nitric oxide is really interesting because, I do a lot of work with Nature Sunshine, and they just created a dual pathway nitric oxide enhancer. And I've been taking it, and boy, it really feel more energy, more alert, sleep
It's a
better.
vasodilator. It's actually gas, and it's produced in the end in the
And endothelial lining, yeah.
yeah. And what happens here is that microcurrent actually increases by quite a big amount the amount of nitric oxide produced, and helps dilate the blood vessel, increasing the volume of blood, increasing the amount of oxygen that gets to the cell. So nitric oxide is a huge player in increasing the speed of wound healing and everything else.
Right.
So I gave a talk back in 2015 in Malaysia after I sat down with the president of the organization, and I mentioned, I said, do you realize that debriding actually a wound actually creates pain, and pain creates inflammation? And he found that extremely interesting because they were debriding.
Okay, wait a second. So you're saying pain creates inflammation rather than inflammation creates pain?
Yes.
Or inflammation and pain are associated? Because I always thought they were just associated.
Yeah.
Huh? Okay.
Yeah, it does. So what they did, he asked me, he said, what do you need? I said, well, after the talk I gave, he said, I said, it would be interesting to get a 100-person wound healing study together. They had lots. The biggest problem with studies is getting a captive audience that will continually show up during a 30-day period, for example. So that 100-person wound healing study, we had 100 people. They showed up for that 30 days, but they only gave me 30 days because they knew after 30 days they get into trouble. As soon as they start getting better, feeling better, then they don't want to show up anymore.
All right.
So yeah, this was the wound area reduction. You can see that we had 100%. 16 people had 100% as we go down, and only 3 had 20 to 29% reduction in the wound size. That would be 3%. 3 would be 2029 would be what we call clinically significant in the medical field.
Right, because like the bulk of the people had a better than 50% increase in wound healing. These were wounds that weren't healing, right? Before.
Yeah, these were 5-year wounds, 3-year wounds, so not healing at all.
So after 30 days, if over half of them have better than 50% healing, that's pretty impressive for those kind of wounds.
And this was the most impressive that actually got the president of the organization, the International Wound Healing Federation, got him involved, and he presented it himself the next year at their yearly congress. And you can see.
So it did more than heal wounds. It helped with other things too: leg swelling, foot swift, sleep quality, helped them sleep better.
You see the early morning erection, 74.2%, which meant that we were increasing nitric oxide production because, for example, nitric oxide and Viagra are pretty well in the same channel. Where Viagra, what they do is they try to increase nitric oxide production in the body.
Right.
So the accelerating wound healing, the way you accelerate is you reduce inflammation, number one.
Right.
You increase oxygenation because lack of oxygen will make a wound fester, and then you'll see infections start to set in. So we increase oxygenation. Angiogenesis, genesis means the creation, and angio means blood vessels, the creation of new blood vessels to increase oxygenation at the wound site. We increase the production of nitric oxide. We increase the production of adenosine triphosphate, which is basically your energy at the cell.
Right. Adenosine triphosphate is basically what allows the cell to get electrons to operate, which means it's basically able to generate electrical energy to operate the cell.
That's
what the cell needs to do.
Without ATP, we'd be dead in seconds. It's
Right.
we
That's
produce
the basic reason for the mitochondria is to produce ATP.
That's right.
Okay. The other thing though is I've long believed that if you need three things to get anything to heal, I just want to see what your take is. One is I feel that there has to be energy flow, and I'm guessing that's really electrical energy flow because the body's electrical through the area where the problem is. Two, there's got to be blood flow bringing nutrients into the area. I mean, and of course, that means the nutrients have to be present in the diet, right? And three, there's got to be lymphatic drainage, removing waste and cellular debris or infection or whatever from the site, right?
Yeah, if you're increasing blood flow, you're going to be increasing lymphatic flow. But lymphatics also rely on diaphragmatic breathing to be able to move.
Right.
It doesn't have its own pump, so we need that.
Yeah, so deep breathing helps move lymphatics. Also, exercise helps move lymphatics. You know, sedentary lifestyle congests lymphatics. But and you can increase lymphatic flow with massage too. So, you know,
you can do that. And laughing a lot helps.
Yeah.
Moves your diaphragm.
Yeah. So
we have a total of 100 patients with chronic wounds such as diabetic foot ulcers, venous leg ulcers, pressure ulcers were recruited. All the patients had a reduction in wound size, with 16 having complete wound closure. All 89 of the patients who complained of pain experienced reduced pain scores, 11 being pain-free at the end of the 4-week period. This was edited from the Journal of Wound Care.
Yeah. And so this is what you wrote about this, right?
I wrote about that and others. About half of the wounds that appear in this book were done here in my clinic.
Uh-huh.
This is a copy of the book right now.
Right. And so this is like, you know, you got here fractures, frostbite, cuts, insect bites and stings, that kind of thing too?
The whole thing, yeah.
Oh, wow. Terrific. Okay, so tell us about PEMFs.
PEMF stands for pulsed electromagnetic fields. Years ago, when we go back to the animal studies that you first mentioned, where we had a problem with bone consolidation issues, where the bone was not consolidating,
right,
and the bone would stay separated. When that happens, you have to cut it off, cut off the limb, leg, whatever. So they started using pulse electromagnetic fields to be able to get that bone consolidation. So the first animal studies that came around were actually pulse electromagnetic fields that were used and they did start by embedding these electrodes on one side of the bone and the other side, and they would send current through it that way, and they found that consolidated. But what we're finding when we were doing wound treatment, we found that the Malaysians were very big on bandaging. So they say, well, we just put these bandages on. We don't want you to remove them to be able to treat with your microcurrent devices. So we had to come up with a fast way to do it. And what we did is we came up with a pulse electromagnetic device that plugged into the microcurrent device. And that way, we just had to point it at the wound. It could be anywhere from maybe around a foot away from the wound, and we would go right through cast. We would go right through.
So you were like pulsing electrical energy at the
exactly right
thing without actually having to make contact with the skin with the electrodes or pads.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. You know what impressed me when I was listening to you was, you know, I've had not only the TENS but you know, like TENS units. You've probably heard of those, right?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
They're very popular, but they seem to just like put a little like zzz, zzz, and this is totally different, right? Than that kind of electrical stimulation that's putting a like current in that's really strong and then backing it off. You're talking about a small microcurrent that's a sine wave, not a like that, not a square wave. And the body doesn't use square waves; it uses sine waves. So you've worked on creating things that do the sine waves, right?
That's right. The difference between a TENS device that stimulates muscle.
I just have to I forgot to turn off my cell phone. So just keep talking. Just a sec.
Okay. The difference between a TENS device and microcurrent is about 1,000 times, which means that a TENS device is 1,000 times stronger and overwhelms the body. That's why you see that muscle.
Okay.
That's why you see the muscle contraction. So 1,000 times stronger a TENS device than microcurrent.
Yeah. So in other words, it's much more compatible with the actual electrical field of the body.
That's right. Yeah. The other one, TENS device is what I would call like maybe electronic Advil.
Electronic Advil. That's a good way to put it. I mean, the fact is that it actually works, but
it only works when you've got it on, and then
it doesn't.
Close the gate and the gate opens again.
One of the reasons why I mentioned the fourth phase of water is because the researchers who wrote that book are talking about the fact that water, when it comes in contact with a semi-permeable membrane, forms a compound called hydrominium, which is a structured form of water that actually creates a lattice work. And so basically all membranes in the body create this structured water, and inside the structured water, it is alkaline. There's electrons, and outside there are the water is more acid. So it actually polarizes the water and creates a little miniature battery across cell membranes. And those they're called exclusion zones. And basically, they've done research showing that, for example, it's the exclusion zones that create the flow of fluid that allows the tree to pull water 100 feet into the air. In other words, it's an electrical flow created by the charging of an exclusion zone. And so it takes outside energy to charge an exclusion zone. And basically all of the activities of the cell are basically controlled by these structured water. So the inside of our cells is all structured water. Understand what I'm saying? And so you have to have energy to recharge the structured water and reform the matrix of the cell, which I thought that might be an interesting thing to add to what you already know, you know?
Stephen, I'm glad that you're the one that explained it and not me.
Okay. Anyway, so tell us about some of the things you found with the PEMF waves.
Well, one interesting thing was because our devices have all of these frequency sets in them, all I had to do was choose a frequency set. If I wanted an anti-inflammatory effect, I chose a frequency set for anti-inflammatory. If I wanted a frequency set that would increase blood flow, in the program we call vaso, then I would set vaso, and this is what we were bombarding the wound with, was increase of blood flow. So it's an extraordinary way to be able to reduce pain, inflammation, increase blood flow, and accelerate the repair of bone and soft tissue. Of course, this is what we were involved in. So microcurrent specific frequencies target problems for accelerated benefit as well. So we were able to select these frequency sets and these algorithms for each one of these programs, which really multiplies the effect of PEMFs, because
so in other words, different frequencies will help with different issues within the body. That's also very interesting.
So we've come out with what we call this Hache pulse electromagnetic field that just plugs right into your other device, so you can have both going at the same time.
So is that what's in the kit where you get the expanded kit, or is that something different?
Yeah, you can get this PEMF unit as well, and it goes right. And I've got little videos that show it, that actually go right through it, where you're pointing it here and you're actually measuring it with another device on the opposite side. So you're getting it to pulse right through the area.
Okay. And then you also have this thing that you developed.
No, it's kind of funny because the testimonials that we got when we started introducing it to the general public is that I'm loving my cheap pulse. I feel like a wizard with a magic wand waving it about pain. Oh God, oh God. It was like a magic wand for them. They're able to use it for so many things. And what we've been able to do is make them into pads or flexible pads as well that you could put under your dog's bed. And one of the things was, let's say if you get benign prostatic hypertrophy, BPH, and you look at these insertable things, I found those a little daunting, and I go, oh my God, there's got to be a better way to do it. So this is where we came out with the smaller pads that you could just sit on, actually, so that you can get to your prostate or other areas of inflammation.
Oh, so you actually can hook your unit up and then have a little pad that you sit on to.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Wow.
Yeah, I found that extremely interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So
one into the other, you can see the Hache just will plug right into that push-port 3 device or any of the devices.
Yeah. Okay, so this also was very interesting to me about how once you get a pain that persists, it becomes like a self-reinforcing thing for the pain to continue, right?
And yeah, it can over time it becomes kind of hardwired into your brain.
So basically, it makes it difficult to heal. So kind of explain this, because this also was very interesting to me when you were talking.
Well, for many years, people in the neurophysiology believed that the brain was hardwired and you couldn't change it.
Right.
Until Norman Deutsch came along and with stories of neuroplasticity, how the brain is actually plastic, is able to change. And every time that you have an emotional anything, your brain will actually adapt or change to change its chemical structure to allow the body to apply the new perception of what's going on. And in the brain's way of healing, he tells remarkable stories about how, let's say, I'll give you an example. Everything about our senses has to do with frequency, like your eyes interpret frequency, and your hearing, and your taste, and your touch. All of these things are frequency based. And we spend all of our lives making a relationship between an image and the frequency.
Right.
So if you had, let's say you have something traumatic, let's say a brain injury, or you have an accident or something that happens, a traumatic brain, or you're playing football or you play basketball and you have a fall and you have damage. What you're doing is you've knocked your radio station off 98.5. Now you're 98.2, 98.1, and all you're getting is noise. And your brain is no longer interpreting that information in the right way. So how do you reset the brain back onto 98.5 is the basic question. This is where Deutsch's book comes in. It's so remarkable that you can actually, by stimulating certain areas of the brain, you can actually get it back on to that proper frequency. And he talks about everything from multiple sclerosis, Parkinson, to many, many neurological disorders.
Right. So the idea then is that the signaling for pain can almost become like the body is interpreting the pain thing, because it's not like correctly interpreting the signals from the body, and it's just stuck. The pain is like stuck on.
Pain. Give me pain. If you're not doing, and the worst thing about medication is that when you take medication, what you're doing is you're reinforcing the signal. Right. I don't know if the pharmaceutical industry knows this, and maybe deviously they understand the concept. because then you set yourself up. So you take the pain away, but you set it up in such a way as it never goes away. It just reinforces it, and you
Right.
need more and more and more medication.
Right.
So one of the areas that's mentioned in his book is the cranial nerves that we don't hear a whole lot about. And the cranial nerves involve, let's say, the different areas of the brain, like your eyesight and your muscles for your face, and your being able to stand without feeling dizzy. Also, the olfactory, your
And
nasal
that
cavities.
includes the vagus nerve, right? That
The
goes down.
vagus nerve, number 10, extremely interesting because your vagus nerve, it has been found out only in the last decade, I think even less than that, maybe in 5, 6, 7 years, that your brain is responsible for the production of inflammation. Although we've known about inflammation for 2,000 years, we know that redness, heat, swelling, and pain are part of the inflammatory process.
Right.
But we didn't really know that the brain was responsible for producing all of those elements.
So in other words, the brain, okay, so there's some kind of signaling when the body gets damaged that comes up, and then the brain signals down whatever messengers to initiate an inflammatory process, as you're saying, right?
So it initiates an inflammatory process.
So are you saying then that the brain can get stuck in initiating an inflammatory process even when there's no longer anything there that's damaging or irritating the body?
Exactly right.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. That is amazing because that explains a lot how a person can get stuck in pain and have chronic inflammation, because basically the brain is interpreting there's something wrong here and continuing to maintain an inflammatory state in some part of the body, right?
We see that in fibromyalgia, we see it in CRPS, we see it in many
Okay.
states.
And so that's where the real, chronic pain comes from, is actually the brain basically continuing to cause inflammation even when it's not necessary.
Exactly right. And one of the biggest discoveries that has really, really affected the field of medicine, and we'll see it as we move forward, is that when you are in fight or flight, you create inflammation. Remember, I mentioned earlier on.
So when you're afraid and you're stressed and you're upset because you're worried about your taxes and your job and your bills and blah 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 blah, you're actually creating inflammation in your body.
Yeah,
I've long believed that stress by itself can create inflammation. In other words, I knew you could get inflammation from getting burned or cut or poisoned or an infection or whatever, but I've also believed that you could get inflammation from just stress. And you're explaining to me that yes, that's true.
exactly right.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. All right, wonderful.
Yeah, it takes us back to that study that we did back in Malaysia.
Yeah, that's
about the breathing and how painful it was, and they were creating inflammation at the same time.
right.
Because
Because as my understanding of the inflammatory process is, something enters the body, inflammation sequesters the area, calls in white blood cells, and basically, to prevent, like, say there's a poison that's been introduced to keep it from spreading, or an infection gets in through the wound to try to hold the infection from spreading. But then other signaling has to come in that switches off the inflammatory process and initiates a healing process, right?
Right.
And so the brain is responsible for signaling, okay, the inflammation is no longer necessary, initiate a healing process.
That's right.
Ah.
The opposite is also true. If fight or flight creates the inflammatory process, so does the parasympathetic state will actually stop it.
Right. So you have to initiate the sympathy, the frequency of the parasympathetic in order to shut off the fight or flight stress mechanism and ease the pain and start healing, because you don't heal in the sympathetic state, right?
You produce all of the elements necessary to accompany inflammation, and even tumor necrosing factors are a big deal as well.
That is incredible information.
Yeah.
So what is this slide about?
Well, we noticed earlier on that the cranial nerves, here's the biggest discovery was that by stimulating the vagus nerve, you could actually put the person into a parasympathetic state, cutting off the production of inflammation.
Wow.
Now, the pons is a French word meaning bridge.
Uh-huh.
The bridge to the all of the cranial nerve sets is actually at the pons.
Uh-huh.
But how do I get to the pons is the big question. How do I get in there? Do I open the cranium up? Do I open up the head? Which is what has been done up to now. If you look at the next slide, I'll show you where the super highway to the pons is. It's actually on your tongue.
Okay.
So by stimulating the tongue, they're finding that they can get to the pons and they can get that radio station back onto 98.5.
Wow. That's really interesting.
The pons treatment actually has been accepted by Health Canada for correcting a lot of these different neurological problems.
So do you put the
Well, they have this device that they put on the tongue.
okay.
They call it pons, and it stimulates the brain. What you do is, while you're stimulating the brain, you have a balance problem. While you're doing this, you can do a balance ball sort of thing, where you're getting your brain to recapture proprioception while you're stimulating the pons.
Really, really interesting. Okay, now the vagus nerve is a very interesting nerve because there's I've heard this before. Your gut is talking to your brain all the time. In fact, there's more messages going from your intestinal tract up to your brain than coming the other way. That's why we have a gut brain. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's important that that information be sent to the brain because your life depends on your being able to absorb food and to be able to eat.
Right.
So hunger, fullness, energy metabolism is all much controlled in that part of your body. And that information goes up the vagus nerve and tells the brain, yes, okay, stop, close it down, open it up, feed me again.
I don't need food right now. I've had enough. Right?
That's right. Only 20% of the vagus nerve fibers instructions from the brain to the stomach. So the vagus nerve wraps itself, and vagus simply means that like a wandering nerve, it wanders all over. It wraps itself around the gut, around the large intestine, small intestine, stomach, spleen, and all the way through, even to the heart and to the brain. So you get all of this information going all the way from here up to there.
About what's going on in the body up to the brain, so the brain knows what's going on in the body, so it can send appropriate signals back, right?
That's right. And you can only absorb, digest, assimilate your food when you are in a parasympathetic mode.
Right. If you're stressed, your digestive system is shutting down.
That's right.
Also, I'm thinking about obviously the whole problem of like intestinal irritation and inflammation, which is then sending signals to the brain that
I got something going on here.
There's something bad happening, right?
Not time to eat.
Yeah.
What people come to me for many years with digestive problems, digestive issues, and I'll tell them it's not what you eat, it's what's eating you is the problem. So what we have to do is we have to deal with what's going on emotionally. So vagus nerve stimulation, and they've discovered this in the medical field. You can see where the vagus nerve is over on in that little picture up here. It's right behind the carotid artery, actually.
Right in here, then, right?
That's right. You're right. If you follow the earlobe, you go straight down the earlobe, and you'll find it right in there.
Okay, right.
So what
that way.
The medical field has discovered is that they could treat rheumatoid arthritis and many other really high inflammatory diseases by stimulating the vagus nerve. So this is getting into the whole autoimmune, right? Well, autoimmune diseases, yeah, definitely, because you got maybe over 100 of them. They're
Right.
all inflammatory based, and there's a
Right.
commonality about autoimmune diseases, and that commonality is always inflammation.
Right.
So we found a way to be able to stimulate the vagus nerve from the outside. You don't have to cut in and implant a jelly bean onto your vagus nerve. You can actually have it done from the outside.
Right.
So everybody wants to use devices now. We're seeing that the National Institutes of Health, DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, all of these organizations, they're looking towards the future. The NIH is a publicly funded organization. It's an American organization, huge, billions of dollars that go into the NIH. And what they're doing, they started a program called SPARC, SPARC. We're back to your Spark device.
Right.
Right. So the Spark program is actually using the peripheral nervous system to affect a cure versus pharmaceuticals.
Mm-hmm.
So that we now have our publicly funded organization, the NIH, studying stimulation of the peripheral nervous system to be able to affect a cure. And they're looking at pharmaceuticals. They're saying we can't stay on this track. We won't be able to afford it in the next 5 years.
Wow.
So microcurrent is the way to be able to do it. This is an organization that's independent that works along with the NIH, and they've come out with an example of targeting the vagus nerve in the neck, for example, to be
Mm-hmm.
able to control inflammation. And every disease, 4,000 diseases, start with inflammation, chronic diseases.
Yeah. Well, see, this is what's interesting about this is because, when I worked with Dr. West, he was talking about the fact that, he called it trapped blood proteins, because when you have an inflammatory process, the blood proteins, the albumin and globulin and fibrinogen, come into tissue spaces causing swelling. And he was saying that was the beginning of all diseases.
That's right.
And that was 1984. And so I've been like pursuing that idea, my whole career ever since then, is understanding. And of course, I understood he was talking about the inflammatory process. And so I've been trying to explain to people it is not multiple diseases. It's the same problem going on in different areas of the body, right?
Right. Sorry,
Yeah.
my cat's trying to get out.
Yeah.
So one of the things if you go back the previous
Back.
slide, go to
Okay.
the previous one, you'll see that we're looking at microcurrent to slash the spleen production of inflammatory molecules. In rheumatoid arthritis, you look at methotrexate, Plaquenil, all of these terrible medications. What they do is suppress the immune system by attacking the production of tumor necrosing factors at the spleen. When we start to understand that when you put the body into a parasympathetic state, automatically you stop the production of these tumor necrosing factors.
Wow.
And also stimulating the vagus nerve may prevent the heart from sending electrical signals to the brain, which would otherwise trigger a host of physiological changes culminating in heart failure.
Okay.
So the common issue, a lot of people would ask us, what can you treat? What do you treat with microcurrent? And I say, well, I'll tell you what is published in the government documents called PubMed and Medscape and other documents on the internet. You can do Google studies on this. Back pain, carpal tunnel, fibromyalgia, joint pain, all of these things can actually be easily treated with microcurrent, so that you can get off these medications that you've been on forever.
And at the same time, you're actually stimulating the body to actually heal itself and repair and go back to normal state, right?
Yeah, instead of taking these meds that you'll be on forever, and then you'll suffer from the adverse effects that the medications.
Right. The increased risk of heart disease and kidney failure and liver disease and all this stuff, because these drugs have horrible side effects. And they're all, even the medical profession knows they're for occasional relief of pain. But when someone has arthritis or other pain, they're taking them every single day, and they're basically creating all these horrible side effects for themselves.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because, if you take methotrexate, for example, for rheumatoid arthritis, the doctor will say, well, the patient will say, well, I've been on Advil, and that seems to help. I take one or two, and they'll say, well, that can cause liver disease. It can cause it. Then we better get on this methotrexate, and we'll back it up with some Plaquenil, and we'll put you on prednisone, and they have this this program, and then you say, what are the chances that you will heal somebody by doing that, by putting their life in jeopardy over this next 2 years? Well, maybe 20% chance maximum that you'll ever heal from rheumatoid arthritis. And everybody out there have been on these programs and they've not healed.
Yeah.
If 20% have healed, and yet doctors will say, well, don't take the Advil. The Advil will definitely damage you. And prednisone, I can only put you on that for 30 days because that's got terrible side effects to it.
Right.
So what's the long-term, what's the long-term treatment that you would like to involve your patient in? Why don't you look at microcurrent and get rid of the problem for them instead of playing with them?
Yeah. So again, the autoimmune is tied into this. Well, we're getting towards the end, and I'd like to get to maybe telling people a little bit about, I've talked a lot about inflammation. You have a couple of different units that people can get, and we have actually put them up for, let me pull up, for sale on our website. So let me put the link up there for that. If anybody would like to order it, we're going to be, we're worked out a thing to be able to offer them through my company, your Tree of Light. So tell us about, this is the top end unit, right?
This is the top end. I mean, this is as far as as technology has ever gotten up to now. These are extraordinary machines. Very, very complex in what they put out, but very easy to use. This one's got 53 different sets, what I would call frequency sets. They include anti-inflammatory programs, solfeggio, vasoangiogenesis, perfusion, neurofeedback programs, alpha, beta, theta, delta, and gamma. We know that the healing starts from the brain. Believe it or not, the medical community has never included the brain in the healing process up to now. This one includes the brain. That helps you get into that alpha state that we were talking about earlier on, about parasympathetic anti-inflammatory modes. You've got the chakra programs, you've got meridian frequencies, you've got a physical conditioning program, you got Easy Lift, which actually helps facelift better than Botox. It's got custom programming.
And there's a manual that goes with this, right, to explain the different programs and how you use them, right?
Yeah, I've written books on the use of this. I've written a personal user's guide to the Pro Sport 3. We have videos. We have online training programs. We've got Facebook support groups. And this thing is going like wildfire.
Yeah. So you can get the basic unit, or you can also get it as part of a kit. And what comes in the kit?
You get the, remember when I showed you how to stimulate the vagus nerve?
Right.
That tool is in there.
The little pads.
You got conductive pads if you want to do extensive treatment. You've also got a comb if you want to do stimulation on certain parts of the central nervous system. So on and so forth. It's got a point probe if you want to do acupuncture points or meridians.
The PEMF thing is separate though from this, right?
That is separate, yeah.
Okay. And then you've also got a smaller unit that's not quite as
it doesn't have
quite as many programs. What?
We were looking for something that had price point between the professional unit and the smaller home device with only 4 programs. This one's got 8 different programs in it, and it is probably one of the more popular because it's affordable and it does just about everything. as well,
Right.
but not as sophisticated as
This one comes both just as a separate unit and also has a kit with some additional stuff in that. So I put up the thing for if you want to go to our website and order these units, you can. There's a description of them in there and so forth. Let's see if there are any questions. Someone was saying, well, like, Amazon has microcurrent items. How do you know which one works well? Well, I was impressed with yours because I think that how long have you been working on this? 20 years?
18, that's one going on 20 years. Yes.
Going on 20 years. So of all the people I've ever seen talk about this, it's you seem to really be spot on. In fact, right before we were talking about something and you mentioned that you have always with clients told them if you can't get them feeling better, that you're going to give their money back, right?
Well, that was, yeah.
When you were doing
clinical life has been, if you visit me 3 times, by the 3rd time, if you're not feeling better, you get your money back. I haven't done this money back guarantee you get better with the device because I'm not the one that's in control.
Right. But I mean, it's interesting. You have the same philosophy as I do, that if medicine was required to get you to heal before they got paid, all the problems in medicine would be solved because doctors would have to focus on getting people healed instead of treating them continuously. Someone asked, are there any contraindications to using these devices?
Not in the 20 years that I've been working with them.
Yeah. And of course,
an adverse event.
And of course, this works just fine with, your nutrition, your nutritional supplements, herbs, doing your deep breathing, all of the stuff that we do in health. But you're basically adding this dimension of being able to stimulate the healing, which is going to make all that work better, right?
Definitely. I mean, lifestyles, your mindfulness, your mindedness, your nutrition, your levels of stress, and your capability of being able to sleep are also controlled within microcurrent, because microcurrent in your body is what permits you to do all of these things. Better nutrition. You can eat all the best food in the world, but if you're stressed out of your mind, you're just not absorbing.
Right. You're not absorbing in it. You're not getting the value of it.
No.
Yeah. And one of the things, this just is kind of a little side discussion, but it's so fascinating that we start off as one cell, right? And that cell has all the same genetic information, and it divides and divides, and all of a sudden it starts creating all of these different organs and all these different structures. And I've believed for a long time that's because it generates a field of energy that the cells start differentiating along those fields of energy, right? It's the energy that's controlling the life process. And I think that we have in our modern society focused too much on the material, right? And ignored the fact that we are at the base level energy beings, not physical beings, right?
We are energy beings right from the start.
Yeah, we're energy beings. And so I've often felt that the future of medicine is understanding energy. And so that's why I really wanted to have you on and talk about this, because I think that the future is in helping to adjust the frequencies of the body to get the body to rebalance itself. So your work really validates that my thinking is correct on that.
When the NIH gets involved, like they have, they've got actually $250 million on the table right now to get people like us involved in producing or coming up with devices to be able to replace pharmaceuticals. When the NIH are involved as much as they are with the SPARC program, you can go on to Google and put in SPARC NIH, and you'll see what the future of medicine is right there.
Right. Does anybody else have any questions before we end today? I guess not. Hey, thank you so much for coming on my program and for telling us about the work you're doing. I think this is really, really fascinating, and I'm looking forward to playing with this more myself and getting the benefits of it. So thanks again for your time, and everybody. Again, I put up the the thing of where you can go on our website, which is treelight.com. And if you just go to the website, you have to look under other products because most of our products are educational. Someone asked, no, The Cure for All Diseases by Hilda Clark. I don't think she talks about electrical energy.
She was talking about energy, but in another form. It's more like rife machines, which is
right,
like
yeah,
antibiotics.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, we've come to the end of our time together. Thank you again for being part of this. Let me stop the slide presentation. And it's been really fun. I really enjoyed visiting with you, and thank you so much for your time. And thanks everybody for joining us. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks for the next broadcast of The Higher Perspective. So
thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Goodbye. Yeah.